Hello and warm welcome to everybody out there following us on YouTube. We are going to have a session in 2 minutes, so I'd like to ask you for some patience until we start over.
Peter?
Yes, you're online. You're getting streamed. We are ready.
Okay. So our next session is from Helmut Hummel. Thoughts on a possible future of TYPO3. Thank you very much, Helmut, for your time, and give a big applause for his session.
All right, thanks very much for the warm welcome. Yeah, let me welcome you on the TYPO3 Camp Online Wien, or Wien Online, and in the Starship USS Enterprise. But of course, since we are all involved in the web development and such, there's a disclaimer, right? Every time you visit a web page, you see a cookie disclaimer or privacy disclaimer and whatever. So I have to start my presentation with a disclaimer as well. I like to point out that it's probably a different presentation than you all might expect. In fact, it's a different presentation than I expected to do before I started doing it and finishing it. So yeah, it's a bit of technical talk in there, technical ideas, implementations and such, but mostly it's about how we are doing things, how we are working together, how we are, yeah, how we are going to evolve TYPO3 in the future, and how we are doing it right now. So please take everything with a grain of salt. It's my personal view of things. It's not a fixed view. It's not like it is like this and it's true. I wouldn't say so. It's like I see things right now. It's a certain perspective, a personal perspective, and as such, the topics I picked are pretty much related to what I worked on, because that's what I know best. All right, so a big disclaimer as image now. So I'm not of a future. I can't predict the future. I can't see in the future, and most likely I state something obvious, but probably you can learn something from it, or get in a discussion with me, or at best, we all get in a discussion together about what I'm saying here today. So I will start with the so-called soft topic or soft topics. How we are going, or how we are currently developing TYPO3 as a team or as a community. There is some kind of team structure, and there is a document for that. And I know how this document evolved and the discussions around, and I don't really want to discredit it, the document itself, or the people who created it, because I highly respect all the people in the community. And yeah, so, but what am I talking about? That's the team structure graphics I pulled from the TYPO3 org website. And yeah, when I first saw it, I was kind of confused, because it is a lot of boxes, a lot of arrows with names in it, and directional arrows. It goes from here to there, and from up to down, and sideways, and things like that. And I was confused, and I was kind of, I wasn't upset, but I was kind of, I don't know, I wasn't happy with that, but I couldn't put it into words. And when I went to make this presentation, I remembered this this thing and looked at it, and I think I can put it into words what I find problematic or kind of strange in this graphic. So that's basically how we work, right? So we have framework mergers. We have people who are developing things, who write code and put it into version control. And there's this blue star for it. And there are different kind of groups that evolved, kind of framework mergers, which work on all the code, and component mergers, which only work mostly on one part of the code. And there are community contributors, and there's this product team, and there's a strategy group, and so on. But what I find kind of strange is that it's, at least at the first sight, it looks quite hierarchical, right? So there's a top part, there's a middle part, and there's a lower part. And even if that's probably accidental, we could have put it sideways as well. It is kind of from top down. So, and on the top, it gives the association that on the top is the leadership, and in the middle is the working class, and in the bottom is the interns, or something like this. At least for me, it gives a little bit of this impression, right? It's also kind of what responsibilities these, or what not responsibilities, but what kind of power these groups, these green and yellow and blue marked things represent. So strategy looks like it's on the top and has more power, because there are these arrows which say instructs, right? So the top thing instructs the lower thing, and from the bottom there comes the work to the framework mergers and things like this. And for me personally, it's probably not for everybody listening here, but for me personally, meanwhile, I'm also, I'm again a framework merger, and I'm also as well a component merger. But when I look at this graphics, I don't find myself positioned in one place. I mean, officially I'm a framework and a component merger, but I'm also interested in strategy. I'm also interested in architecture, and I care about these things. And I'm interested in, I don't know, I'm interested in discussing a roadmap, and interested in long-term product goals or product strategy. And I don't have expertise in all these areas, but I'm interested in, and I think I can contribute to all these areas. And this structure graphics just doesn't represent that very well. So my impression is that what has been tried here is to put something into to put something out that helps to make it clear for the people what role they have. But it also looks like, yeah, it's like a management graphics from the 90s, right? There's the product management, not the product management, the project management on top, then there are developers, and then the interns in the bottom. And yeah, that's kind of strange that we perceive, and I really include myself as well here, because I participated in working out these structures and these concepts, and yeah, that's the result, and I was part of it as well. But it's still, when looking at the result, it feels strange that we perceive ourselves like that this could work out for us as a TYPO3 community working and developing the product. And the reality is quite different. Even if this is our goal, the reality is more like that. It's really nicely put by Commit Strip that we think that a lot of people are involved in something and they are talking to each other, and maybe not top down, but everybody is together in a room and discussing things, very agile style, and drawing graphics and stuff like that. But reality is that most of the time, also in the TYPO3 community, it's this a lonely developer in the evening fixing stuff because he likes to fix stuff, or she likes to fix stuff. So yeah. But what I think we're really good at, when at least not on the planning side, but on the developing side, that we established a good way of working on code, at least. So we have very elaborate testing. Even if this could be improved, it's already very good. We have coding guidelines. We care about architecture, which also doesn't work out perfectly, but most of the time we care about these things and come to good conclusions here. But what about developing the right thing? So are we always, or most of the time, looking from the right angle and yeah, doing the right thing, like this iconic picture presents, which is more meant for a classical project management perspective, right? But it also partly applies to TYPO3 or open source communities as well. So there are people on their laptops developing things, and there are some people thinking about stuff, and they maybe talk even with each other, but there are a lot of misunderstandings, and the outcome often isn't what people need. And with people, I mean people using TYPO3, right? We developers, and we project leaders, or we whatever documentation writers, we all are users as well, but there are people using TYPO3 in very different contexts, and they might expect really simple things that we just don't see, and thus develop something different, what we think they could need. And there's also something, some other aspect to that, and that is, who are we who are developing the software, and how diverse are our perspectives in general? So if you look at this tweet, these slides are partly from the slides I gave for the online event a few weeks ago. This is a tweet, I won't play it right now, but it basically shows that it is important to have diverse product teams, because this soap dispenser just doesn't react on dark skin. It only reacts on white skin. And how about TYPO3? Are we doing mistakes like this as well? So not really, or are we? So let me just give a few examples, and again, not to blame anyone or whatever. It's just things that happened if we don't pay close attention to get diverse perspectives into what we're doing. And one thing I could pick out here as an example is the page tree. the page tree was redeveloped. It was rebuilt to be faster, to be better, to be nicer, to not have XJS as base because it was never not maintained anymore. And it was great for some people. It wasn't great in terms of accessibility because we as developers didn't have this on our priority because we didn't need it, right? So the accessibility wasn't built in from the beginning like it was for the old page tree, but it was an afterthought. It was built in later. So now we have an accessible page tree, but it took 2 versions. Yeah, it took 2 versions of, no, yeah. First version, the page tree was implemented and the accessibility was implemented in the next version, but also one part. So it's the page tree is now accessible, but yeah, the backend still lacks some things. And the other thing is it was built and it was tested, but suddenly it was recognized that the performance wasn't okay for some people. So a perspective from a TYPO3 installation with millions of pages just wasn't taken into account. So what I want to say with that is, again, not to blame anyone here, but just to encourage our all perspective, and I really include myself in here as well, to get in as much feedback as possible when doing things, not just thinking, okay, I know how this has to be, but asking different people, presenting the ideas, discussing the ideas, and going on from that. So what now? Yeah, as I said, I don't have a solution for that. I don't have a silver bullet, or I can't foresee the future and things like this. But yeah, let's recognize that not everything is code, and that something like writing documentation is very important, that onboarding new people is important, so that we need to focus more on mentoring and getting people on board. I personally am really bad at that, doing mentoring. So I really need to improve in that, for example. And also discussions and decisions. I mean, we have decisions, TYPO3 org, but it's not used very often. And people are talking to each other, but in small groups. And it's not as transparent as it could be. But I also, as I said, I have no idea I have no practical ideas how to do it. I only have the impression that, yeah, that we need to work on this, and then that we need to improve. And what I think is key to improve is to be open, to listen to listen to other perspectives, to listen to critique, even if it sounds unfair at first, and to listen what is really behind this critique, and not to be offended by when people are angry, but just trying to filter out if they're angry because they want to be angry, and then we can just ignore that, or if they are angry because because they have a point. They have a point, and yeah, try to find out this point and be respectful in this process and finding out. And also, yeah, like I said, do mentoring, be inclusive, and maybe also think about if the 6 eyes merge principle rule is enough to get diverse perspectives. I mean, all these changes I mentioned before, they happened all respecting the rule, right? So if you get 3 people looking at something, then you can merge something. But is it really enough? Is it enough to get a diverse enough perspective, or do we need to change our workflow somehow to get other views on things? And yeah, do we probably need to turn around the expectation that, yeah, everybody could have reviewed that, and maybe approach people to and actively ask them for feedback? Okay, I hope this all didn't sound too bad or too negative. I really didn't mean that, and I want to highlight a few things again from my personal perspective and from my personal experience, that things also go right. And I picked an example where I was part of, and that's deferred image processing. So just to explain what this is and what the problem is. So let's say you have a website or a TYPO3 backend where you want to show multiple images, but not multiple images in their original size, but a smaller size. Example, file lists with thumbnails. So the problem here is that scaling large images take a lot of time, or can take really large amount of time. And in case all your images are on a remote storage like Amazon S3 or whatever else, web dev server or whatever, it takes even more time currently with TYPO3 because the images, even if they are located at an S3 bucket at Amazon, they get downloaded to the TYPO3 instance. So this takes time already, and then image or graphics magic downscales the image, which also takes quite a bit of time. And then the processed image is uploaded to the remote instance again. So that takes a lot of time. And if you have a certain amount of images, it gets tedious. And of course, if you're scaling many images in multiple variants, like for responsive websites from a remote storage, it can break your site. Just to give you an example, I made a website for a friend of mine, and he's a photographer. And his website design is a one-pager. So everything is on one page. And on this page, he wanted to present his work. And his work he wanted to present was clustered in 15 image galleries with around 25 images. And all these 25 images needed to be scaled down in 4 variants for the different screen sizes. So that, for example, on a small screen, only a small image gets delivered. And as well, because he didn't want to have much work with TYPO3 and with uploading the images, and also because he wanted to sometimes offer customers a download of the original image, each image that needed to be downscaled was about 10 megabyte of size. So this resulted in a processing time for the first hit of his website in about not seconds, but 10 minutes. And I mean it, minutes. And that's, of course, a no-go. That doesn't work out. So I found workarounds for that. I did a scheduler task that pre-calculated the images because I knew which sizes the images had to be in. But we also needed a solution for TYPO3, and what was implemented there was a solution for the backend, because even in the backend, if you have the cropping tool and multiple cropping variants and the file list and the idea of having a nicer file list where you can have different views of the images, images in different sizes need to be calculated, and doing this in a single request, one by one, would, like I pointed out, would have taken too long. So the implementation was done for the backend only, and that's one of the limitations. And another limitation is because of the implementation, how it is done is basically, it's instead of processing the image in the request, is just generating a URL for this image with a processing information, and this URL represents an endpoint in the TYPO3 backend, which then processes the image and delivers it. But since we only know the processing information, we don't know how the image dimension of the processed image looks like. So what is done here currently is just outputting the URL and putting in some width and omitting the height. So just assuming, the width is the thumbnail width of always 64 pixels, and the height we don't know yet. So it could be 64, it could be something different depending on the image ratio. And this results in quite some layout shifts. So images are loaded or the HTML is loaded and the browser layouts like he thinks it would be. And once the images are loaded, the layouts shift all the time because the real sizes of the images are known to the browser then. And what's also a limitation is that the deferred processing of these images is not a default. So for every place in the backend modules that we wanted to have processed deferred processing of images, we would have to implement it in code explicitly, not just say process the image, but say, okay, please generate just the URL here. So this led to some places being deferred processed and some places just being processed in the request. And of course, third-party extensions, which also displayed images in the backend, would also either use the new API or not use it. And yeah, it was just isn't or wasn't consistent. And another negative thing is that even if the image is processed already, we always deliver through this endpoint because we always deliver, we always generate this URL, and we never know and output the width and height. So it's quite an overhead. We always bootstrap TYPO3 at least to a point and look if the image is processed and then output the image. And last but not least, all this process is not cacheable in the browser because all TYPO3 backend endpoints send no cache headers. And this results in, yeah, if you think back at the graphics, it's probably not the tree with a tire in the end. And this was recognized, and this is how this implementation was challenged. So a group of people saw, okay, this might not be optimal, and they met, and we realized that we are not alone in thinking that we would need a better solution for this. And everybody in this small group took initiative, and an official initiative was also created. And we started with gathering viewpoints. And when I was part of this group and thought, okay, I know how this needs to be done. And in this discussion, I realized that, oh no, I don't know. I don't know all viewpoints, and others have also good points. And so we discussed and laid out everybody laid out their viewpoints. And we came to the conclusion, okay, we need to have a good concept where we can realize all these demands the different people have. And we agreed on this concept, and yeah, finally we also worked on it. Also with different people, part of this implementation of this execution also already landed in 10.4.0 or even 10.3, I don't remember exactly, but in the latest, in the first LTS release, it was part of, but it was not finished yet. So in the last weeks, I had a little bit of time and picked up the topic again and did quite some refactoring in this area. And now we have, we have a bug fix, or basically we have a solution which is so small and so good that I would say we can, just put it as a bug fix into 10.4. It changes a little bit, but yeah. And the great thing about this is that the solution we agreed upon is, or the demand we had when discussing is that we don't need, or we don't want a solution which only works for the backend, but we want to be open for other implementations and use it for the front end. My example I pointed out beforehand was exactly the front end, the website of this photographer, which needed this deferred processing of images. And what we have now as pending bug fix, which hopefully will get merged anytime soon, is that image dimension are calculated or can be calculated now before the image is actually processed. So we can, when we render the HTML, already know the width and height and avoid these layout shifts. And also the API for processing images just looks the same as before. So you don't have to say, okay, this needs to be deferred and please use this URL now for processing the image. You just say, I need a processed image, and you're done. And all images in the whole backend, even from third-party extensions, will become processed asynchronously. And the best thing I would say is that this only happens if the image isn't processed yet. If the image has been processed, just the URL of the processed image is put out and can be cached by the browser then, of course. So what were my learnings from that? So my learnings from that, and maybe also in general, in my experience, also in working from customers, that of course, coding is always required, but only one, and sometimes only the smallest part. So the more complicated part and the at least a large part is finding out which is the best solution for the people who will use this, what we are developing. And my learnings from that, and basically what I always learn when working is that doing things right takes time. It doesn't mean that if you hire a senior whatever 10x developer means that this person will be 10 times faster. No, maybe it's 10 times slower, but maybe 100 times better. I don't know. These numbers are just made up. So if you want to have something precise and good, it takes time. And but if you did something right and it works out nicely, it is really also as a developer very satisfying and very fun to do, to see a customer or a user of things you have done being really happy because you did the right thing. But there may be other modes. So not only these, making a plan and getting many people involved and things like this, especially for the for TYPO3 functionality. I want to challenge another thing I hear very often is that, oh yeah, we need this and this has to be in the core, because if it's in the core, then it's done right, or then it's perfect, because it's so important that we need it in the core. And I want to challenge this view a little bit, because if it's not in the core immediately, it means that you have more freedom to experiment. You can try things, and if this experiment doesn't work out, you probably didn't invest too much time in it, and it's not in a very big project where it's really hard to get rid of if it's in, because other constraints exist, like release cycles and much higher user base and things like this. And because you have the freedom to experiment, you can have much faster iterations, and you can do more iterations. You can support multiple TYPO3 versions, which your software or addition to TYPO3 can couple with, can tackle. And with that, you also can grow a user base for this little software you create. And by that, you can work around things, and it's okay to find workarounds. For the TYPO3 core, which, like I said, is a bigger, more complex product, we always strive to not to do too much workarounds in the code, which we have to maintain for years after that. Right, and if you do so, if you experiment, if you do fast iterations and do stuff, my experience is that very likely you uncover API constraints in TYPO3, which you can then tackle iteratively. So you can see, okay, my code in my extension could be nicer if TYPO3 would only change these few lines of code. And then these few lines of code are changed in TYPO3, and you change the extension, and this TYPO3 gets released, and then you find, okay, but if this and that would also be changed, then probably I don't need any workarounds at all anymore. And I have already experience, and I have a large user base, and everything works out, and everybody's happy. That's probably then a good good time to think, okay, maybe we can deliver this as official part of TYPO3. Yeah, people who know me are probably know that I developed TYPO3 console, and what I said right now is exactly what I did with this piece of software. It still contains some hacks in there, workarounds, but TYPO3 changed a lot and made it a lot easier for TYPO3 console to work nicely and be a good citizen for TYPO3. But there's still some rough edges, but yeah, it is worked on iteratively to allow integration in TYPO3, and that's the plan. And it will happen, but it takes time. I don't know if it will happen for TYPO3 11 or if it will happen for TYPO3 12. It will happen when it is time to, and when it's ready. And there are other things that could be improved for TYPO3, like not delivering really private assets in the web server document root. So the default of TYPO3, if you don't pay close attention and apply security rules to your web server, your Fluid templates are delivered, and your TypoScript files are delivered, and your vendor directories may be accessible. And in the vendor directory might be PHP code, which is example code, which might do unexpected things. And without these HDXS or Nginx or Windows IIS rules, which are in these files or in the configuration suggestions that TYPO3 delivers, then you're pretty much screwed. So the goal, of course, is that the web server document root of TYPO3 itself, as it is delivered, only contains the assets that are meant to be public. So the PHP entry points, the index PHPs, your public assets like CSS files or JavaScript files or icon images or things like this. And everything else should be, in a different place. And it has been worked on for years. I mean, this initiative started, I don't know if I remember correctly, it started with TYPO3 4.5 to get rid of all the entry points in the backend. And starting with TYPO3 8.7, I think, it was possible for me to create a small composer package. Currently, it's only possible for composer, with which you can achieve that. It's a small hack, but it works very nicely. And it's like I said before on the slides before, it uncovers the limitations of the TYPO3 API, where I can see, at least as developer of this package, okay, if we change this and that and tweak here and there, then it's not much work to get rid of this current experiment and current useful tool, which is available now to secure your TYPO3 website, and just deliver this configuration or this capability for TYPO3 by default. And another example also by me is because I was annoyed by some limitations of scheduler, I created crontab also with the idea to have this functionality in the core at some point. So it's really great to just experiment. Another example, not from me, something like structured content or content grids. There's of course the old kids on the block, grid elements and Flux. But they also, if you don't know it, just check it out. It's really awesome. A new extension called Container, developed by B13. It's really awesome. It's clean. It is fully tested, and it's also kind of an experiment. Okay, how would we develop this from scratch in a way that maybe could be implemented in TYPO3 at some point? But we don't want to implement it because we need more experience with it. So yeah, just test it out, and yeah, we gain experience as a company B13. We gain experience with it in projects. Other people can gain experience in projects. It can evolve on its own. And with this experience, this from different perspectives, this experience then can go into a solution for TYPO3, for the TYPO3 core. And speaking of content and structured content and hierarchical content, my personal perspective or a future idea for this is, what about a content repository? Because I mean, what do we have in TYPO3, or what do we have in content management in general? It's basically a tree of content. We have pages, and TYPO3 implements it as pages table, and then we have TT content, which is just a child of a page, and TT content can also have subchildren of itself or of other tables, and we have a mixture of relations to each other, and the data model is really complicated and in many places very unclean and also error prone, and it's really hard to get right. And TYPO3 is meanwhile pretty good at it to get these things right, but from a pure theoretical perspective, it's a really messy data model, and maybe we should think in a totally crazy direction and think about what NEOS has done. They created the NEOS content repository. Currently, they are working on a much more performant, variant of this content repository. And maybe we should experiment in trying to have a page tree based on this content repository, and have a page module based on this, and edit content based on this. I don't know if this is possible, but yeah, these experiments will take time, and yeah, I just want to encourage people to think in this direction, and not to say, yeah, that's NEOS, they do the content repository stuff, and we're TYPO3, we are the PHP MyAdmin advanced on the PHP MyAdmin advanced side of things, and this is our data model is just based on database tables, and that's it. So yeah, that's basically what I have as topics. I could have added multiple different topics, but yeah, my main point is that it's great to be open for crazy ideas, and that it's always important that we talk to each other. I mean, we won't deliver a better TYPO3 product in the future if we are not just chatting, but yeah, deeply talking with each other, and listen to others, listen to concerns, listen to demands or requirements, and probably try to, in this process, more often than not, make plans and try to follow these and do more faster iterations. And we think, I haven't put it in the slide here, but not saying, okay, we made these decisions 10 years ago, we have to stick to it. But yeah, just be open and say, is this decision from 10 years ago still good for what we need now? Maybe we should revisit it and change it. And yeah, but also don't try to force things or push things. That was also my impression, that at some point in time, it was kind of, yeah, we need to do this and that, and we need to get more market share, and that's because we need to deliver features fast, and first this and then that. Yeah, might be a good strategy. I don't know. Maybe we need to talk about this as well. So just take our time and rethink and not doing things too quickly. And yeah, the next thing is in this process, when we rethink processes or when we have conflicting or diverging ideas or having discussions, yeah, be respectful. That's a lesson I really had to learn very hard because I wasn't a good citizen here. I hope I improved, and I will always work on myself to improve here as well. And I want to encourage everybody to see the other person as person, and just acknowledge that their perspective might be valid. And of course, the obligatory take-home message in these times is wear a mask and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Wow, what a great talk. Thanks so much, Helmut. Vienna, if you want to chat with us, please unmute yourself. I muted you during the recordings. And that was a very respectful and very, very good talk with lots of valid points you made up. Thanks so much, Helmut.
Thank you.
Vienna.
Oh, hello, thank you very much, Helmut. I would like to start with a point here. I think there's a connection between the two talks, the talk from Benny and your session. Involving more the user in the development or the product development, moving the focus away from developer-driven product, as I think Benny mentioned, and moving to do user-driven product development. I find it very interesting that this point comes from a development perspective. What can be an idea move more in this direction? How can we set up product development where, as you mentioned now, where we can bring more another perspectives in this product development?
Very good question. I have no idea. That's really hard because I mean, it's if we look at not at open source development, but just as business. In the business, we as software development community developed a lot of strategies to tackle that. So we have this agile movement, we have these small teams where the idea is to include multiple roles and multiple perspectives in each team, so that they are not only developers or not only PHP developers in one team, and then they are the front-end developers in one team, but all developers or all people involved in doing one thing have to be in one team. And that's really hard to do in open source, because there are many constraints, like what kind of people do we have at all who are willing to contribute their time? And how many time do people have, and how many time do people have when, right? So even if in the good example I gave with the image processing, that was on few slides, but the whole process from, okay, there's something merged in the core, which some people agree might not be optimal, to now we have a solution, took, I don't know, 2 years, or was it only 1.5 years? And the coding part involved, even the discussion part involved, was maybe, I don't know, 10 days. So, but still, due to time constraints and priorities from different people, it took 1.5 years. So that wouldn't be acceptable in a customer project, right? So if you say to a customer, yeah, you have to pay for 10 days, but we deliver in 1.5 years, that wouldn't be possible. And that's mainly the question I have. How can we still apply some of these ideas we have in the business world, like more iterations, more customer feedback, apply to open source development, where everybody sits on the laptop on their own most of the time. That's yeah. I think if we find a solution to that, that would be really a game changer.
Okay, thanks. Somebody, the feedback or a question here? Vienna. Okay.
I have one.
Yes.
Hello, Helmut.
Hi.
It was really great to hear you and to hear your reflections on actually the different levels that you present. Especially, I really enjoyed your personal insights and how you're dealing with it. And I see that you're kind of shaping a path maybe for everybody who's adapting to what's going on in our world at the moment. So thanks a lot for that. I think to give you some answers to why things sometimes take that long is that good things take long. So I believe that it's no shame to actually to say, okay, under different contexts, under different circumstances, we are executing maybe other solutions in a faster way. I have been discussing many times and for many years on how we can, on one side, have, like, say, the innovation aspects in TYPO3 being tackled, and I'm very much up to a more transparent and more visible backlog of such things or visible list of things. I also appreciate that you are reminding people to actually initiate a decision process. I think that is something that we really need to work on how the decisions are made and so on and so forth. So all those back chamber stuff that is always happening, and I'm also part of that back chamber club, that we need to change that. So it's not a change that will go overnight. It's not a change that everybody will maybe happy with. But on the other side, I think you're totally right, and I welcome your initiative here, and I welcome that you're speaking up to that. So that's my reflection, and great to see you back. Great to see that you're wearing that cool Corona beard style like everybody at the moment, and lots of greetings and lots of highs and hugs, virtual hugs through this Zoom conference.
All right, thanks. I just came to my mind that I have an example from a open source community, which I've, at least from an outsider perspective, it looks very nice, and that is the PHP community, not the developing with PHP, but developing the language PHP. They also were in the crisis, and the development of this open source project stalled. And then what they did is basically a 180-degree turnaround and made everything totally transparent. And now nothing is changed, really, at least what I see, nothing is changed in this open source project, in this PHP language, without a decision, a very clear decision process and a suggestion process and discussion process, and with not with 6 eyes involved or 3 people involved, but everybody ever at some point having contributed anything to PHP is allowed to vote on any feature. And the majority of these votes are taken into account. And for certain types of changes, 2/3 majority is needed. So that's, of course, this cannot be applied one-to-one for our project for TYPO3 because it's a totally different scope. But maybe it can be an inspiration of what can be done, being more transparent and being more open and involving more people. So it's not, I would say it's not impossible. I think it's complicated to do so, but I think we should try, and it is tried. I'm not saying nobody tries anything. I mean, the whole initiative. So having something like initiatives where groups are formed and people can discuss and meet and present things. That's already a great idea, and it's a try to tackle the complexity of our software, our product, and our demands and constraints. So, but I would encourage everybody, including myself, to challenge even that and try harder and try better and try more.
Okay, thank you very much, Helmut. Thank you very much for your honest ideas, or your honest, yes, honest session here. So, yes, Peter, I give back to you in the Zoom meeting.
Yes.
Excuse me, sorry. Thank you very much, Helmut.
Thanks again, Helmut. Yeah, great session. For now, we are cutting off the live stream on YouTube. We will also end the Zoom meeting for about 15 to 20 minutes for downloading all our recordings, and we'll be live with the Zoom meeting at 2 o'clock. So if you want to join us for your lunch break and have a chit chat, join the Zoom meeting after 2 o'clock. And the next session, it's gonna be me, I guess.
Yes.
Wait, where's my plan? Here's my plan. Yeah, and we'll start at 2:30. So happy to see you then. Bye for now. Have a great lunchtime.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.